Okay, I'm drinking during the day. It's like 9:30 in the morning and I'm drinking. I've drank more in the last week and a half than I have probably in the last like year, but I haven't drank much in the last year. Uh so I privatized or privated a lot of or all of the previous uploads on the channel here. Things are just kind of a little bit hectic for me right now. Um I don't think anything horrible could happen to me, but I just wanted them off easily findable places. Because I don't know if like people could search transcripts of like what's said on YouTube. I mean, I know that there's like a closed captioning that's auto, but I just don't want I just don't want them up there right now. But overall, for me, everything's okay. It's been an extremely hectic week and a half or 2 weeks now, I think, and things are going okay. But it's been really weird. So yeah, I wanted to do a review of this because in the last week and a half or so, I read this whole thing. It's huge. It's 1,200 pages, and I've had this for a while, for a month or two now, and I found time to read it. And overall, I really like this. Until I was about two-thirds of the way through, I was thinking that this is going to go down as like one of my top 20 comic books ever. Then the last third or so kind of took it down some. But overall, I would say that it's in my top 30. It was going to be probably, towards the bottom of my top 20, but I would say it's still top 30. And it's excellent. It's really good. Um, I had heard of this, but I hadn't heard it praised as much as it should be praised. It's all from the same guy. He does the writing and the art, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Lapham. Either way, it's excellent. And I've read things written by him before. I've read Deadpool Max, I think. I want to say Deadpool Max. It's the mature Deadpool comic. I think it was Max. And there's a sequel series to that. But in total, that's maybe, I don't know, 16 issues or so. And that was pretty good. Probably the best Deadpool comic, I would say. The one that David Lapham did. And this is even better. I mean, this is really great. The earlier issues, they're like one shots that do not seem very connected. They're like vignettes, I would say. But then you start to learn about the characters, and the characters recur throughout, and slowly you kind of get an idea of what the timeline is. And it's mostly set in the 80s, although the first issue is set in like 97 or something, which is when I think it first came out. And I wish that, yeah, 97, which is I think when the first issue actually came out, but most of it is set in the 80s. Not that it really matters. Not that it really matters. I mean, I was thinking back. I wonder when I read this, if I read this when it was coming out, like if I would have thought, oh yeah, this is clearly set in the 80s. But as it is now looking back, it's like you could have told me this was the 80s or the 90s, most of these, and I wouldn't have known the difference. I wouldn't have been like, no, this can't be the 90s. This has to be the 80s. There's a lot of characters that are great. There's so many different personalities, and it really speaks to the strength of the writing and the art that it doesn't really take much before you get an idea of the characterizations of these people. And let's go to what brings it down, kind of. There's these chapters which are like set in the future or something. I don't know if I can find one now. But they're meant to be like this little girl's stories about this like superhero. This is one of them, I think. This superheroine who lives like 1,000 years from now, and they're cool. But boy, do I not care about them as much as I liked the other issues. So that brings it down some. And also the fact that towards I don't know, maybe 70% of the way through, the issues really do tend to become much more chronological, and they follow mostly kids. And that's okay, but I like the other chapters that were more about, like, the adults. I mean, the kids are good characters, they are, but it just becomes too kid-centric, and it becomes a little bit too chronological, and it becomes a little bit too, I don't know, plot-driven on a singular or a few different plot elements. Whereas for most of this, it was very expansive and it was all over the place with what the timeline of the characters is and who the characters are. And I like that more than when it became plot driven. And if it was going to become plot driven, I would rather that it would have become plot driven, focused on the crime lord who's kind of behind all this, who I don't think we even see, but we hear about several times from the first issue even. And I wish that if it was going to become focused on anything, yeah, I think it should have become focused on who that crime lord is, what the deal is, what happened with him, blah blah blah. Now maybe in Stray Bullets issues after these, maybe it goes into that. If I had to guess, I'd say that it probably does, but it doesn't, and it doesn't need to do that in this collection. I didn't feel like, oh geez, when are we going to find out who this guy is? It doesn't need to. But if it was going to become focused on anything, I wish it would become focused on that, not focused on these little kids in this town. It was okay. This was okay, but I couldn't help thinking, for the last whatever 300 pages or something. I couldn't help thinking like, oh boy, this is dragging the average down. I still really like this overall. The art pretty much perfectly works with the stories that are being told here. The art fits it pretty much perfectly. Now, that said, am I a fan of the art? Not really, but it does fit. So, what does that say about this whole thing? If I didn't really like the art, and yet I still thought so highly of it overall. Well, because it's unique and the writing's pretty great throughout. Yeah, I mean, this was excellent. I wish they would come out with another collection this big, collecting everything after this. I don't know if he's still working on it. I know that Stray Bullets issues have been produced in the 2000s. I mean, I'm pretty sure that these issues span between like 1995 or 6 or 7 or something into the early 2000s. But I know that that there are quite a few Stray Bullets issues after this. I don't know if it's enough for another volume this big. It's probably close if it's not, and I would be very interested in that. I would want another collection like this. This was great, and it really speaks to the strengths of what can be done in comic books. I mean, with every issue, it kind of felt like this guy could just go in pretty much any direction that he wanted to. I mean, it's centered around sort of underbelly, criminal underbelly, but not really, it's not really steeped in crime. It's more like what happens to people who are close to crime. Yeah, and that's the way that it is all the way through, and it's pretty excellent. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's really good, and I'm glad that I read this. I'm surprised this doesn't get more accolades. Actually, I mean, other things kind of do, but maybe I think this would be talked about more often if it was coming out in the like the late 2000s, because I think that there are characters in here that people would champion. But I think that's about it. That's all I have to say. I really recommend this a lot. I don't know how many more videos I'm going to do here. I don't really know what's going to happen with my life. Yeah, I don't really know what I'm going to do. But yeah, I recommend this.